I wanted just to briefly update you on work that will be going on over the course of the next couple of months in terms of academic strategy. We have been, as you know, now 4 or 5 months in implementing both our transition to the Common Core standards statewide, as well as implementing the Compass system statewide, which we view as simply mutually reinforcing tools. I want to share with you in 3 areas how it is that we are going to be approaching next year's strategy as school systems and charter schools and non-public schools begin to think about implementation for the 2013-2014 school year. On one hand, is the question of what are we actually teaching? And yesterday, you in committee approved a no action, essentially, in terms of approving new textbooks for the future. And we are moving toward a time, it's clear in our conversations with, I should say for the interim future, where it's clear in our conversations with educators that they are going to be having a world of content available to them through means that are not traditional, through new means. And we're already seeing, in fact, that districts are making significant investments in technology in ways that we weren't seeing before. In January, we're going to be releasing a new updated report as to the digital readiness of every district. I was thrilled to see in Ms. Bophy's district that Lafayette Parish has just announced a very sizable investment in technology and their ability to acquire content through technology. And our role as a state, therefore, is going to be in line with not so much just textbook approval on a 7-year cycle, and I took your caution yesterday or your guidance around potentially some reform in that area, but instead around trying to help educators select the content that is most appropriate, whether it's a full textbook, whether it's a unit, whether it's a lesson plan, whether it is a interim assessment, whether it's a framework, et cetera. And that going into next year, therefore, what we hope to provide educators is not a prescriptive comprehensive curriculum, not a textbook that is approved but not really yet aligned, but instead is a framework for how they might begin to sequence skills and for how they might begin to measure on an interim basis the attainment of those skills in English language arts and math. And so we'll be providing tools and guidance for educators for themselves to make the adjustment to the Common Core. But we are backing away from kind of uniform monolith curricula or textbooks as the only way of doing that. Secondly, we published 2 weeks ago a guide to how assessments will transition over the course of the next several years. Our team, as you know, has made changes to this year's assessments such that writing prompts on the ELA assessments will change. And board members, as I've said to you before, and I know Mr. Lee and others can verify this, I've just been tremendously impressed with the degree to which educators in the field have their eyes very keenly focused on this. You know, I was just in a 3rd grade classroom a couple of days ago actually I was in a kindergarten classroom a couple of days ago where they are really reorienting the way that kindergarten students dialogue so as to build a basis for evidence and use of response, you know, even at the earliest levels. And that's a great shift to see in response to the shift in our standards and really in response to a shift in the writing prompt. We are going to be field testing this year items in English, science, math, and social studies that will be Common Core aligned, but that will not count on the test. In 2013-14, those items will flip to be fully measured items that will count on the test. So you will have about 10% of the test that will be what we think is as best aligned with the Common Core assessments as possible, such that by 2014-15, when we have delivery of our PARCC assessments, our educators have been fully used to a Common Core-like assessment that counts, has some accountability to it, but is not fully yet phased in. And by 2014-15, we'll be on schedule to be fully phased in. Finally, as you know, in 2010, Act 54 required the development of Compass, which was developed between 2010 and 2011 by the ACE Committee. It was then piloted statewide in those districts that volunteered for the pilot in 2011-2012, and this year is the first year of its full implementation. And as I've said from the start, as in any first full year of full implementation, you're continuing to learn. We've been taking feedback from the field, and we've been hearing really good things about how educators are using Compass to make sure that practice improves, to identify high performers, to identify those who are experiencing the greatest level of challenge in the classroom. And we probably see a couple of areas in which the specifics of Compass can be adjusted slightly, and I've alluded to this in a couple of media pieces. I've alluded to this in some conversations with you as well. But in how our data are being used, especially for teachers who are not on the highest end or on the lowest end necessarily, in terms of how we apply the data for students who are what you might call distinct populations, such as students who have experienced a disaster of some kind, how we communicate the data element of this with teachers, such as how we do the scoring, how we clarify what the scoring ratings actually mean in terms of where you are on the effectiveness continuum, and frankly just more clarity up front for teachers as to the data we have on their students and on the back end for teachers in terms of how their students actually did on the test. We know that in those areas we can continue to refine Compass to make Compass an instrument that just helps inform practice better. And I think if there's one theme that I ask you to take away from what we hear from educators, it's not a resistance to Compass, and there is certainly in some corners there is that, but by and large there is not that. It is a desire for it to be a tool that helps them achieve the expectations of the assessments I was talking about before. And so by and large they're asking for, how can you make this as clear to me as possible? And principals are saying, how can you help me use this to help me develop my teachers better? And we thus would like to, I'm going to be engaged in a series of public discussions in many of your regions over the course of the next month. We'll then be engaging with the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, with the Principals Advisory Committee, with the Educators Advisory Committee, and certainly with board members around some of these changes, or I should say adjustments, such that by January we will have a proposal of adjustments to be heard by the board. I think it's important that superintendents and their teams have the changes in significant enough time such that they can make modifications in their own plans. So I think it's a matter of some urgency. You're not talking about a seismic shift. You're still talking about a rubric. You're still talking about use of data. You're still talking about goal setting. Those pillars are standing us in very good stead. But we will be recommending some adjustments, as we probably will in most years, as we continue to learn ourselves about this process. I wanted to share with you that we are engaged in that process ourselves, and we look forward to engaging in dialogue with you about it as well. Madam Chairman, Madam President, I thank you for the time.
If I were to identify the three most significant areas of work that we did, was one, we approved the framework for the Act 3, the early childhood work, and that was a really great first step toward the implementation of Act 3 and the coordination of all early childhood from 0 to 5 in the state. And we had a lot of good input. We had a lot of good stakeholder support. So we did that. We also, in Act 2, requires the board to develop this course choice program. And in December, this month, we approved 45 prospective providers that will be providing different courses, either virtual, direct, or any other, or many other ways to provide toward credit recovery, remediation, AP classes, foreign language classes. We approved the providers. That program will go into effect the next school year. And then what probably took the most amount of time this month was the approval. December is the month that we approved new charter schools. We had over 40 applications. We approved 12 new schools. We also renewed, based on some very set criteria, other schools in their third year, whether or not they would be based on their academic performance, whether they could receive a provisional approval or another 5-year approval. And so we went through that process for several of our charter schools. It was their time in the rotation. And then finally, the sad part is we revoked the charter. We declined to renew 4 charter schools in New Orleans because of poor performance. They just did not meet the standards that we have set for charter schools, and this board has very high standards for approving charter schools. We approve very few that come before us, and the board has never shied away from shutting down schools that we believe aren't making the grade.
There's nothing more important than making sure that our youngest kids are getting what they need. And we know that because we know if you don't get prepared when you're 3 and 4 years old, you're going to have troubles down the line. So we've got a fragmented system that's letting too many kids slip through the cracks right now. So this is trying to create a unified system where every child can be guaranteed quality.
How do you assure this will help these students out?
Well, I think it's about two things. Number one, it's about standards. We've got to set common standards. It's not about the name of the program you go to. It's about, are we getting standards and equity and achievement for all kids? But secondly, we've got to help our educators too. And this ensures that every educator, whether you're in child care, whether you're in pre-kindergarten, what have you, gets the same resources and the same professional development.
In a nutshell, can you give us the details of the 3-year plan?
Yeah, we're going to start next year. We're going to pilot some changes in various districts, looking at how well our kids are developing, enrolling our kids and giving our parents greater transparency, more information for our parents. Then the year after that, we're going to try to scale those practices statewide. And then finally, by 2015-16, we'll be ready. We will have done it as a practice run before, and we're going to be really ready to implement all of these new practices statewide.
Wrapping up here, do you think that, do you already know what pilot programs you will, what schools you'll use?
No, in January we're going to request schools and school systems across the state to propose to us who would like to be involved as innovators, and then we're going to be the ones they're going to be the ones we learn from over the course of the next couple of years, and that's the way to do it. Learn from the people on the ground, and they'll show us the way.
I know money can be linked to this. Depending on how well the school performs, how much money the state provides. Talk about that. Do you think that will put a fire under these schools to do better?
Well, I think it's always good to encourage people to do better and do more because you can fund them more when they do well. I think also it's a little crazy when you've got places, and there aren't that many of them, but there's some of them, where kids aren't coming out able to even recognize letters or even count to 20. Why do we keep sending public money to those places? So it's about rewarding. It's also just about making common sense decisions for our kids.
Anything else you want to add?
No, just say, look, right now, our early childhood system is all about adult rules and adult programs and names and titles. We've got a fragmented system of different programs. Let's have one program of excellence that says there's different paths, but there's one standard for learning for our kids. And that's what we're doing here by creating one network, one standard for all of our kids.
Superintendent, what does the research show about the importance of early childhood education?
Well, early childhood education, it's been proven through research here in Louisiana, can last a lifetime. In other words, it's an investment we make in the child early so that we see benefit over time in the child's reading, the child's writing, math, and otherwise.
These are reforms that you're talking about. How do they fit into the Louisiana Believes program?
Well, Louisiana Believes starts with the idea you got to believe in our kids. And kids don't just become kids when they turn 5 and go to kindergarten. They've been kids before that. So we have our children in our child care programs, in our pre-kindergarten programs. Let's make them the best they can possibly be. Those schools, they've got 117 schools in the scholarship program. They're up and running. They're serving 4,900 kids, and those families are doing well and happy with it. At the same time, there's folks who are trying to stand in the way of those families and getting what they need. And in those cases, I think we've got to ask, when it comes to the unions or when it comes to special interests, why are they trying to stand in the way of parents doing what's right for their kids?
What kind of results have other states had with the voucher program?
The other states have had good results with scholarship programs. They've been able to raise student achievement. They've been able to raise graduation rates. But this is about Louisiana parents. And the question I keep coming back to is a moral question. What do our families deserve? I think our families deserve the right to choose what's best for their child. It doesn't matter how much money you got in your wallet. But some people are trying to stand in the way, special interests, unions, and to me, we've got to ask, is that right? I think it's wrong.
How long can these students stay in the voucher program? Is there a set deadline since the judge said it's unconstitutional how it's funded? When do these students have to return back to public schools?
Well, this is going to play out in court over time, and so long as that's happening, these families can rest assured. But if I were a family member and I had chosen for my child, especially coming out of a school ranked D or F, and someone's trying to stand in the way of me doing that, now we have this ruling, I would be scared. And we're going to find a way to make sure those parents are taken care of. The schools are going to find a way to make sure those kids are taken care of. But if I were a parent, I'd be concerned and I'd be asking, why are these people trying to get in my way?
Is it safe to say that they can stay in school, these voucher students can stay in their private schools until the end of the school year of this year?
They can stay in so long as it is being heard by a court until that court's ruling, and we're going to find a way. We're going to find a way to serve these kids. I hope the court will find in what we think is the right way. But most important is this question: why are people trying to get in the way of parents just doing what's right for their kids? It seems very simple to me. Let's honor the right of Louisiana tax-paying parents to send their child where they think their child will be served best.
Chas, first of all, your reaction to being elected the new president of BESE?
I'm excited and I'm proud. I've enjoyed working with BESE members. I think I've worked hard to consider a variety of different perspectives when we deal with issues. I hold education reform in our state is the highest priority that we should have, and for me to be elected into a position of leadership in that regard, it means a lot. It's humbling. I'm grateful.
What do you see as the goals of the board in 2013?
You know, I think our big challenges going forward this year and in the past are the same ones we've had, but with some new emphasis. We still have 230,000 kids below grade level. We have to give them access to high quality education. At the same time, we've rolled out a lot of new policies that we need to make sure the implementation is done properly. We're doing teacher evaluation now. We need to make sure that's fair to teachers. To those that are in the classroom, we need to make sure they're treated fairly, but at the same time, we need to make sure we use that instrument as a way to make sure their teaching is better and that we have better outcomes for kids. So I think looking forward this year, we have a lot of implementation issues, more so than new policy issues.
Talk a little bit about the situation currently in the courts with the voucher program.
Well, let me say this. I'm a big supporter of vouchers. Let's make sure who that helps. That primarily helps underprivileged children who are trapped in failing schools. And if we as a state can't offer them a way out of a failing school, then shame on us. I don't agree with the ruling. I hope we win it on appeal. If we don't win it on appeal, we're going to find another way to help kids that are trapped in failing schools, give them a way out.
Just how serious a problem is that in Louisiana?
Well, we have 1 out of 3 kids below grade level in our public schools in this state. And quite frankly, a large percentage of them are underprivileged, come from underprivileged backgrounds. It's a serious problem in our state. If we're going to have real job growth, if we're going to have a vibrant economy, if we're going to have a healthy population, if we're going to be the state we want to be, we need to lift up all of our kids. And the voucher program, despite what other people may say, is an instrument to help those people get a chance.